ESPN's Sports Center. But you know what? I remember ESPN when they used to play Home Run Derby. And I'm not talking about the All-Star Home Run Derby. I'm talking about the TV show Home Run Derby that was hosted by a guy named Mark Scott. ESPN ran it because there was no other sports on. The man who helped build ESPN into the world leader, his name is George Bodenheimer, and he wrote a book, Every Town is a Sports Town, Business Leadership at ESPN from the Mailroom to the Boardroom. George Bodenheimer, welcome to KTRS here in St. Louis.
McGraw, pleasure to be with you. By the way, it's Bodenheimer, but you don't have to worry about it because you can call me George.
I'll call you George. How about that? So you were the one responsible for putting Home Run Derby on ESPN?
No, I can't say I was, but I do remember it fondly. You bring back memories with Home Run Derby, and we ran the sprockets off of that program way back in the early days. I guess that was in the early 80s, if I recall, but remember it very well.
So you were there at the very beginning, and today we take it for granted, but back 20, 30 years ago, a all-sports 24-hour television station was revolutionary at the time.
Well, in fact, that's how I got the title of the book, Every Town is a Sports Town, because it goes back to my days in the southwest part of the United States, trying to call on 3 cable operators a day saying, hey, we've got this 24-hour sports network. You have a 12-channel cable system. How about putting us on? And I literally got the same answer, McGraw, wherever I was. It was basically, George, the idea of a 24-hour sports network sounds absolutely crazy to us, but we'll put it on if you're giving it away, which we were at the time, because, this is a sports town. And I heard that in every single town I was in, and that's really what is part of the fabric of America, certainly in St. Louis. I don't have to tell you that. I mean, how sports mad the fans are out in your city, and really that's really what ESPN tapped into.
And one of the things that was interesting was when you started an all-sports station, you had to make up programming. And so that's where the Home Run Derby came in. And I heard a story about the early days about ESPN broke and came hat in hand to the Anheuser-Busch Brewery. Do you have any stories about coming hat in hand, begging them for money and programming?
Well, the story is absolutely true. Well, depending on how you characterize it, because our founder, Bill Rasmussen, did not have significant funding to start his idea of a 24-hour sports network. He needed programming, which he went to the NCAA for, also in Missouri. He went to Anheuser-Busch to cut the big deal, advertising deal, knowing that sports fans enjoy an occasional beer when they're watching. And some really, forward-thinking executives at Anheuser-Busch did $1 million deal, the first big deal for ESPN before it went on the air. That really, without that deal, it's questionable whether ESPN, would have ever made it this far. Bill had to put the revenue, the programming, and the distribution together to get ESPN off the ground. So Anheuser-Busch, big supporter of ESPN from day one. I
heard that the brewery said, we'll give you the money, we want spots, and we'll make up these boat races for you. Is that how it all came down?
I'm not familiar with the boat races, but it certainly it could be accurate. I recall something along those lines, but I don't have command of those facts.
Yeah. The book, Every Town is a Sports Town, is part memoir, part biography, and then part business book. When did you realize, George, and when did the people inside Bristol say, hey, wait a minute, this might actually work?
Well, again, I would say it's early to mid-'80s. We started televising things like the NFL draft and the early rounds of the NCAA tournament, and we started to just get feedback from people. Again, before it was rated on television, we started to get anecdotal evidence that people liked what we were doing. We're getting calls from fraternities and firehouses saying, hey, we want to watch the NFL draft. We want to watch this NCAA game. Can you tell us can you tell us where the nearest bar is to where we're located that carries ESPN? I mean, literally, it was anecdotal things like that in the early days gave us confidence that what we were doing out there was resonating with fans.
When you went to the NFL to tell them you wanted to broadcast the draft, they thought you were crazy.
Well, they did indeed. I mean, but to Pete Rozell's credit, it was Chet Simmons, ESPN president at the time, that went to Pete and proposed this idea. it was considered somewhat of an odd idea. I mean, it was a business meeting with a bunch of men sitting around with phones in a hotel conference room. But to the NFL's credit, they supported us right away, and it pretty much worked quickly. And those are some of the fondest days of ESPN starting that NFL draft. Now look at it. It's a 3-night primetime special that rates as high or higher than some of the games.
And there's 2 networks that cover it now.
Yeah, that's right.
Every town is a sports town. George Bodenheimer is our guest. He started in the mailroom, went all the way up to the boardroom. The deal when Disney bought ESPN must have been a pretty special time in your life.
Well, it really was. I was a couple of years away from becoming president. I was running sales and marketing at the time, and for all of us who had been at ESPN from the early days, to wake up one day and be owned by the Walt Disney Company was quite something else. I mean, there's one of the world's greatest corporations with iconic things like Disney World and Mickey Mouse. All of a sudden, they're our owners. So
yeah.
They put a lot of wind in the ESPN sails, as I write about in the book, helping us focus on branding and really marketing ESPN. I give them a lot of credit.
George, one last question for you. People are talking about getting rid of cable. They're tired of the cable bills. All this programming nobody watches. What's the future of ESPN if cable implodes?
Well, first off, I don't think cable's going to implode. I think what you're seeing is a natural evolution of technology, and people want more choice, and obviously the entire industry is responding to that. You're seeing new business models and new packaging, coming to the fore all the time, and ESPN, along with the Disney company, is obviously participating in that, so we can figure out ways to continue to serve fans. But ESPN has really driven the cable business for 35 years, so despite the evolution and the changes, I feel ESPN is on very good footing because of the popularity of sports.
The book is called Every Town is a Sports Town. George Bodenheimer is the author. George, thanks for checking in. Good luck down the road.
All right, thanks for having me.
You got it. Every
Bye-bye.
town is a sports town. Great stories about the beginning of the sports universe, really, when you think about it.
Really great interview.
I got 20